Hello everybody, welcome to Railway Trip in Tibetan Style. This is Niu Niu, bringing you another series, another episode of our special series here in Lhasa. Yes, we've traveled from Beijing to Lhasa. Lhasa is the provincial capital of Tibet Autonomous Region, and we've taken you to multiple places, enjoying the beautiful natural resources and environment of this beautiful autonomous region, as well as trying really hard to bring you the culture as well as history part of the place. And right now I am standing in a place where we are about to learn a lot of a very special period of culture. I am in the memorial hall marking the emancipation of 1 million serfs in Tibet. 我们现在呢在100万农奴解放纪念馆. Right behind me you can see this sculpture of people celebrating the free or peaceful liberation of Tibet. They're all in a very happy manner, and this elder lady right here is holding a hara, which is a white cloth, showing respect as well as best wishes to their guests. And this is exactly the kind of scene that's shown to the people sending from the inland of China, other provinces of China, to peacefully liberate Tibet. So we are going to be here, learn a little bit about the history of this region, hopefully providing you with a little bit of knowledge that you'd like to know, so that in the future, you've already done your homework, it will be a great opportunity to come here and visit the beautiful Tibet Autonomous Region. So let's continue to walk and go inside and see what's inside there. Let's go. We talked a little bit about the serfdom society. Actually, I think a more accurate way of expressing it would be say it's a feudal society with serfdom and bureaucracy. So at that period of time, actually ever since the 10th century, 10世纪开始, Tibet was in this kind of very special, let's say, society where the upper class as well as the middle class are in a really great power over the lower class. Ever since the 10th century, there has been this people are, let's say, bounded to the land, and they do not own any land, even though they're working really hard. They don't really have any power over the creating of their own lives, and that is why for them, as long as they need food, they need to provide for themselves. They need to borrow some money to the landlord, and the, let's say, interest of that would be it would be enormous, making them forever in debt to the lords. And that is basically the starting point of this serfdom society we were talking about. But the first stage of this exhibition is actually talking about the relationship between Tibet and China. So if you take a look at here, you would see that many, let's say, evidence suggests that from a really long time ago, China and Tibet has this really close relationship, this intertwined interaction between these two parts. Because we cannot, of course, we say that Tibet has always been an integral part of China, but that started around the Yuan dynasty, and before that, China was, you know, underliving these states where the little states would unite together and somehow they would get separated. So it's the same idea for everything. We have a saying, 分久必合，合久必分. That was talking about the situation, the central government's power over different states, different, let's say, provinces, levels of places. So we, as far as I see, Tibet and China has always had this very special bond and has always had this same source. And right here, if you guys do remember, previously we've done a live stream in Beijing in the Tibetan Culture Museum, and we saw this specific picture. It is called 步辇图, 步辇图, showcasing during Tang Dynasty, the Princess Wencheng was married to the Chubo Songzang Gampo, who was one of the most important Tibetan Gampo. let's say, king of the Tibetan dynasty, and that was also one of the most important and significant picture in Chinese culture. So I think that is a really great proof that starting from Tang Dynasty, the interaction as well as the link between the central government of China as well as the Tang Dynasty as well as the Tibet dynasty has become stronger and stronger. So in this part, we can see a lot of different interesting evidence that you might know or you might not know of, but do not worry about it. These are all interesting pieces of evidence of important history, and check out that 唐波会盟碑 or 救生会盟碑, that one we've seen as well previously, showcasing the meeting of the two dynasties. Back in Tang Dynasty, it's around 700 BC. And right here, if you follow me here, you get to see that here, this is the Yuan dynasty, which is very important period of time, because starting from Yuan dynasty, the central government of China has successfully and also officially taken Tibet into the land of the Yuan dynasty. So from Yuan dynasty, Ming dynasty, and Qing dynasty, actually the central government of all these dynasties has absolute powers over the administration, the governance of Tibet already. And ever since this time, you started to see that in order to have a better connection with the, let's say, Tibet local governance, they started to find different ways to, have better governance. And that, among all those ways, the religions started to be one of the most significant ones. For those of you who have just tuning in, you're looking at a special episode of our special series, Railway Trippin' Tibetan Style. This is Niu Niu. We are broadcasting the show on multiple platforms, including CRI Learn Chinese Facebook page, YouTube channel, and 英语环球广播微博. We are also live streaming on CGTN platforms as well as China Plus Culture platforms. On all these platforms, we would love for you to leave a comment, and we will try to answer them as soon as possible. As long as you have a question, we will try to find the answer. This is a very important part of the history, and we want to absolutely make it right. We are right here in the Memorial Hall, marking the 1 million serfs getting their emancipation here in Tibet. And this is only the part showcasing that ever since Yuan dynasty, actually Tibet has been an integral part of China. Let's continue to move and see what else can we find. Oh, this is an interesting one. Here, this is a 3D, let's say, forming of electronic shape of the Jinping, a golden urn, Jinping, a golden bottle. But this one is with significance, it's with special significance, because ever since Qing dynasty, one important emperor of Qing dynasty realized that a lot of the living Buddhas, because there is this system of the living Buddhas find the soul boy who's got his, let's say, when he passed away, people would find the soul boy who's got the soul rested, or who's got the living Buddha's soul rested in him, and he will become the next living Buddha. And ever since Qing dynasty, the Qing dynasty emperor found out that around 3 to 4 living Buddhas at then were actually reborn in the same nobleman family, and he thought it's only their way to get bigger power over people. And that is why he said in the future, if there is, let's say, a living Buddha or there's a soul boy possibility, the Jinping Cheqian is a must-have process. So this process means that if you are really a soul boy, they will put the name into this bottle and have maybe another one with no names on, or they would find several possible soul boys, and the one who got the lucky draw out would be proven to be the real, let's say, we say, reincarnation of the living Buddha, 转世活佛. So that is what this bottle is about, and let's go continue to walk. Moving on, here we see a lot of sculptures. These sculptures actually depicts the situation when overseas, let's say, forces trying to invade Tibet. Local people fought against it heavily because to them, they want to protect their land and they do not really want any foreign forces. And that's how hard they fought to protect their land, to protect their, let's say, right to be a part of China. And back then, we can see some exhibition of the tools and weapons they use. These are the weapons they use. As far as I know, actually, UK has invaded Tibet for 2 times, and they were fought against heavily. So, and there is even a movie talking about that. So if you guys are interested, you can go find the movie. And it's a war movie, history movie, but hope you can enjoy it and learn a little bit history about it. And right now we are standing in the second part of the exhibition here in the Memorial Hall, talking about the serfdom society. When it comes to the serfdom society, we've already covered that it started from the 10th century when people, if they're born from a family with rather poor background, maybe when they're born, they are already in debt because being born would result in their family get heavily taxed, and the taxation is very extreme. We'll show you a little bit later. And also, since the Qing dynasty, actually because of the rise of the Gallic sect of the Tibetan Buddhism, we say Gelupai, Pai, or the yellow hat sect of the Tibetan Buddhism, there started to be this, let's say, hierarchy of, or a kind of a caste system in Tibet as well. The very top level, the very top class would be the living Buddhas as well as the government official in Tibet. And after that, there will be officials. The second class include officials and high-ranking monasteries. And the third class would be people who are actually working, the farmers, the lower-rank monks, the, let's say, merchants, women and children. These belongs to the third tier, the third class. And right here we can see a little sculpture showcasing. This is something very extreme, and actually have a little bit document with me. Let me read it out to you. It's extreme in the sense that at that time, people's lives, you can actually put a price tag on people's lives, and that is very extreme because we see that the 13th Article Code and the 16th Article Code, which had been enforced for several hundred years in old Tibet, stipulated that people were divided into 3 different classes by blood and position, and that each class was further divided into 3 ranks. Each class, 3 ranks, and the value of life corresponded to the difference in class and rank. The bodies of people of the highest rank of the upper class were worth the height of the body weight in gold, and the lowest one, the lowest sect of the lowest rank, worth just a straw of rope. In Chinese, you can see that 命价草绳一根. That's what the situation was in old Tibet, in the serfdom society under theocracy. So, very extreme. Let's move on to see what are some other situations here we can see here in the exhibition hall. Right here, you get to see that around actually 5% of the people in the upper class, in the first class, hold or is in possession with over 95% of the wealth in Tibet, the lands, the mountains, the livestock. They owe 95% of all the wealth of the Tibetan society, whereas the 95% of ordinary people working really hard to create a better future for themselves would not ever see the better future because ever since they were born, they are already in debt of their lords, of the noblemen, and perhaps of the high-ranking monasteries already. So, yeah, these kind of pictures is really depressing to me because I cannot imagine that around, let's say, 70 years ago, the situation in Tibet were still like that. And when we were here in Tibet, when we were talking to some Tibetan people, they can tell us that their fathers or their grandfathers were actually lived under the situation of being a serf, being a servant of a nobleman. They were living in poor condition and they have literally no future. And what will make me happy perhaps would be the latter half of the exhibition, knowing that this situation no longer exists. Let's continue to walk. In contrast with the situation or the living condition of the serfs, of the ordinary people, we get to see that the higher ranks, we say the so-called the three higher ranks of society are living a really good life in a luxurious kind of way. When they're happy, they will own pets and they can do anything to their slaves. But to be fair, I think the serfdom society back in Tibet was not exactly precisely as, like, let's say in, for example, spring, autumn, and the Warring States period of time. At those times, the slaves were exactly slaves. But for these serfs, they are in between the situation of a slave and of a poor farmer with no land at all. So it's a semi-slave situation. But yeah, they are. Ooh, this is very common. Actually, I've seen this in TV shows. I see TV shows when it's a really high-ranking nobleman, you would see someone bowing and on their knees to be what we call in Chinese 上马石, getting on your horse, the stone helping you to get on your horse. So this man is basically acting like a tool helping the nobleman get on his horse. In contrast with the living condition of the higher rank officials, monasteries, as well as noblemen, we get to see that right here, in contrast with their lifestyle, the serfs are living in really poor conditions. This is also a, let's say, rebuild of their life situation. And here we get to see that for these different kind of serfs, there are also different classes. Remember, different groups of people in three different classes. And Longshot, this one I have a very particular memory about because its name is raised at home. 家里饲养的, raised at home. They do not have any material. They do not have any means of, let's say, any means of creating a better future for themselves. They were considered talking animals at home. Talking animals, 会说话的牲畜或者是会说话的动物. They were considered the lowest rank in the Tibetan society, old Tibetan society. Ooh. Okay, follow me here. Along the wall, you also get to see some pictures, and I was told that this picture particularly is depicting a story. Over there, we get to see an old Langsheng, elder Langsheng over there. He's already lost his sight, and he is, let's say, struggling to get a better life, but he's not getting one because his lords would not, let's say, pardon him with mercy. And this little boy right here is actually his grandson, and his grandson is going to be traded off in exchange for a donkey. A grandson for a donkey. And that shows how horrible it was during the old Tibet. Let's continue to walk, and I was also got the information from the staff here saying that some monasteries even have private dungeons with instruments of torture used for eye gouging and hamstring, in addition to handcuffs, chains, and clubs. Perhaps we get to see some of it here in this memorial hall as well. You are watching a special episode of Railway Trip in Tibetan Style. This is Niu Niu. We are bringing you the show on different platforms, including Here I Learn Chinese Facebook page, YouTube channel, as well as 英语环球广播. We're also bringing you all the shows on all the CGTN platforms, including the website, the official Weibo, official Facebook, as well as China Plus Culture. So if you like what you are watching right now, if you feel like you are learning something that you didn't know previously, please let us know in the comment area and leave a question if you have any. We will go out of our ways to answer the questions. Let's continue the exhibition and perhaps we can see more. Let's go. Alongside the wall, there are also pictures of the sufferings of the Tibetan people. You can take a look. Exhibition halls are my favorite spot when I'm visiting different places, because I think in museums, in exhibition halls, I get to see different things. Not only the situation now, but also the history, but also some cultural relics. So there is a saying, 历史是最好的教科书. History is the best textbook, because from history you would actually judge by history, knowing that who is helping you, who is actually aiding the people, supporting them and providing them with a better future, and how to, do good country governance, how to create a better society, how to have an atmosphere that would encourage people to do the right things, encourage them to, let's say, be a better person, to cultivate them to be the better self. And that's why I think in a museum you get to learn more. And right here we are standing in front of a set of sculptures showcasing the harsh treatment of serfs, the harsh treatment they get from their lords. Remember the dungeons we talked about? Actually, in many monasteries here in Tibet, the underground place would showcase some of the dungeons that is, let's say, exhibited here. Oh, yes, the hierarchy is explained here. The highest, middle class, and lower class, and the highest class, the upper class, the higher one would be the living Buddhas, and their price of their lives is with no price. And I think, yeah, the ones I was talking about, your life is worth the price as the weight of your body, the same gold weight of your body is only the second tier, so not even the highest one, the upper one. Ooh. And here we can see that the 13 code as well as 16 code we were talking about. And here this is the Old Tibet law suggesting 杀人者以大小论敌，仆人反抗主人，实属主人受伤较重的，砍掉手脚；主人打仆人，医治即可. So basically it's saying if the serf dare to fight against its lord, then it would perhaps they would lose their hands or lose their feet. But if the lords feel like, I don't know, torture their serfs, they'll just have the responsibility to give them so-called timely treatment. I do not think that is actually the case. Here we get to see a lot of different kind of punishment, different ways to punish the serfs. The one I was talking about here, that's the very harsh exploitation and really strong taxation. You get to see here, these are some of the tax the serfs need to pay if they live in this society, including, for example, 唱歌税. 唱歌税 is like the tax you pay for your lords if you want to sing. And also, 人头税 is I would say the simplest one. This means you need to pay a tax if new babies were born. And of course, you need to pay a tax if someone passed away. You need to pay a tax for getting braids. That's called 发变税. And also 食柴税, pay a tax if you want to go and pick some firewood because it's really cold at home. As long as you're picking the firewood, you need to pay a tax. These are the taxes. 食牛粪税. If you want to get some feces of a yak to keep yourself warm, you also need to pay a tax. These are all different kinds of taxes. 养花税. 养花 means to raise flowers. There is a tax there as well. So that was the situation in around the, I'll say, starting from the 10th century, it gets worse and worse. Till the Qing dynasty, people were living under all these really heavy taxes. And before 1951, before the peaceful liberation of Tibet, in old Tibet, people were living in such condition. And I talked to some Tibetan people. It was actually the case for their previous generations, for their ancestors, and for their fathers and grandfathers. And I was doing a little bit of research, and I didn't really find a lot of documents written about this kind of society from the perspective of a serf. And after a while, I realized that it was not because of that they do not want to write about it, they are fine with the living conditions. It was actually because they cannot read, they cannot write, they have not received any kind of education, they do not have the ability to nourish their own culture, they do not have the ability to write their own stories. But I do have a little bit of information written from the perspective of an upper class. I see it right here. There is a proper document showcasing that the 5th Dalai Lama has actually issued a written text saying, 拉日兹巴的百姓听我的命令. People living in the area of 拉日兹巴, you need to listen to me. 如果你们在企图找自由, 找舒服, if you still ever wanted to seek freedom, if you want to seek comfortness, 我已授权拉日兹巴对你们实行砍手、砍脚、挖眼、打杀. I have already authorized the leader of your area, the lord of your area, to cut your hands off, cut your feet off, gouge your eyes, beat you, or even kill you. You should not ever think about seeking freedom. It is against the law. So that was one order issued by the 5th Dalai Lama back then, and that gives me goosebumps, gives me chills. It's really hard for me to believe that a religion, in a certain sense, one is combined with politics, can actually say something and do something this harsh. So just my personal, let's say, opinion right here. All right, let's continue to walk. You get to see that, yes, here we were talking about the serfs not being able to accept any kind of education. So the control is not only about having them tied on the land, working so hard every day and getting tiny little bits of material. It's also about the control over their spirit, over their culture, and basically over their future. Okay, let's continue to walk. Like I said previously, in Beijing, if you are still, or if you have watched that live stream previously, you might still remember that after a while, the situation, after the peaceful liberation of Tibet, the situation got much better. But before that, we get to see there are many pictures showcasing the living condition of the people there. For example, this specific one, Sangdeng Qiuqi. Sangdeng is the elder man in the picture, and he is on his knees begging for a little bit of milk, yak milk, or perhaps buttered tea. and he was literally with no dignity because he cannot provide for himself. But later we're going to show you another picture. Perhaps you have seen it in the museum in Beijing, and if so, tell me in the comment area, do you still remember who Serfdom was, and do you still remember the picture? For the serfs, the only way, especially when it comes to the period in Qing dynasty, the only way for them to fight, for them to try to get out of their poor lives, were no longer like fight against the upper class, the ruling class. It was no longer an option because of the tight control. For them, the better way, or the only two ways, the first one would be ask for permission to change a lord. So I want to change my owner. I hope that I can get another owner. And that was the first kind of let's say, way to fight against their lives, their destiny. And the second kind would just to be, let's say, cast out, to find another place to live. Of course, there's just no better place back then in the old Tibet. Let's continue to walk. This shows the living conditions. Let me provide you with a little bit more information that I found interesting before coming here. Actually, the reason that I want to share this is because in the what we call the Tibet after the peaceful liberation, the new Tibet, started to be all these different kinds of economic development, this aiding, because Tibet was actually really in a poor situation due to the really immense difference between the upper class and the lower class. And let me give you some data. Actually, the family of the 14th Dalai Lama owned 27 manors, 30 pastures, and over 6,000 serfs. The Dalai Lama alone owned 160,000 taels. One tael equals to 30 grams of gold, 95 million taels of silver, over 20,000 pieces of jewelry and jade ware, and more than 10,000 pieces of silk clothing and rare furs. So that is the money, the kind of lives, the kind of luxurious lives the upper class were living in. But that situation stopped around 1951. So 1951 was the year of peaceful liberation of Tibet, and 1959 some people, some really small proportion of Tibetan people started rebels in different places, and that was because their comfortable, luxurious lives was in danger, and that got dealt with properly. And now we can see the sculptures showcasing the Liberation Army coming into Tibet and providing local people with, accepting Hada, providing them with food they are going to need, and providing them with medical assistance. That is what this is about. Ooh, in this part I feel like I can breathe again, because people are finally getting out of their horrible living conditions and terrible destinies. And yes, this is an interesting map showcasing the 4 different routes the People's Liberation Army chose to actually, let's say, get into Tibet and peacefully free Tibet. And these 4 different roads are from Yunnan province to Tibet, from Sichuan province to Tibet, from Xinjiang to Tibet, as well as from where we are right now, Ali, the other side. So the reason that I feel like this is a very interesting picture is actually because excuse me, that's the Xinjiang one, and that is the Xining, so Qinghai, from Qinghai to Tibet. The reason I found it interesting is because these routes actually coincide with the major expressways, major railways getting into Tibet nowadays. Actually, our team of the railway trip in Tibetan style got into Tibet from the Xining Lhasa railway. After 22 hours, we are here. here. So something very interesting I would like to share with you. You are watching a special episode of Railway Trippin' Tibetan Style. I am Niu Niu. We are here giving you all this information and a fun tour in the Memorial Hall, marking the anniversary of the emancipation of 1 million serfs in Tibet. You can find us on CRI Learn Chinese Facebook page, YouTube channel, 英语环球广播微博, as well as all the CGTN platforms and China Plus platforms. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can leave them in the comment area and I will provide you with as much information as possible. What we are looking at right now, these are happier lives. Local people are started to learn from each other, to talk to the PLA, and to enjoy what do we call 民主生活, democratic life. Okay, let's continue to walk. Allow me to provide you with a little bit more information that I got. Actually, back in let's say 1951, the average life expectancy has increased from 35.5 years in 1951 to 71.1 years in 2019. And the population of Tibet started from 1.2 million to 3.5 million now. So I guess once you got a better society, a better system, the social economic development would also provide you, will also show you that you are choosing a right path. Here we are, we call it 民主改革, democratic reform. Democratic reform, that is the reform we were talking about in 1951. Starting from 1951, the central government get into Tibet and started to initiate the democratic reform, making sure that serfdom or serfdom society no longer exists in Tibet. They wanted to give people the land that they need to work on. They actually have them burned, all the certificates saying that they are the property of any kinds of lords or any kinds of noblemen. And ta-da, we have our serfdom once again. In the old Tibet, he was this man on his knees, begging for food by others. And now, look at this one, serfdom de di. That is what that plate was talking about in Tibetan language. That is saying this is the land of serfdom. Serfdom finally were able to have a piece of his land and create his own future with his hands. Like I said, if you have anything you want to say, you can leave me a message in the comment area, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. Right here we see more than serfdom. Serfdom was only one example of millions of, 1 million of Tibetan people getting a better life and accepting livestock and accepting their lands. These pictures actually showcasing 才旦卓玛. She is a lady that I really do have memories of because back when I was a kid, when I was watching the Spring Festival Evening Gala, I would see her singing on the stage. And I saw this piece of interview of her saying that someone like me, someone as an offspring of a serf, would never have the chance to go to any kind of school, let alone art school, to learn singing. But because of the peaceful liberation, now I get to go study in an art school, learn to sing, and even sing in the biggest stage in China to all the Chinese people in the most important event in China, the Spring Festival Evening Gala. That is something I cannot even imagine. And yeah, I guess that's the beauty of having freedom in your life. If we continue to walk, we get to see that there are a lot of firsts exhibited here in this memorial hall. For example, right in front of me, I see the first school in Tibet. It was built around 1951, and it's Chengdu Xiaoxue, Chengdu Primary School. It's the first school in Tibet because 95% of the population in a region are just serfs. You don't really need school. You just need them to work and to provide you with, let's say, labor. You don't need them to be educated. But it was no longer the situation in Tibet in 1951. That's when we got our first school here. Then we got our first People's Hospital. We call it People's Hospital because previously, of course, there are also some hospitals and some doctors. Mostly, those doctors would be the monasteries. They would provide some certain kind of cure, but I'm not really sure what the cures are, let's say, in exchange for. But nevertheless, first hospital in modern Tibet. A lot of firsts continue to appear. For example, this is a sweet one. This is the first batch of photographer showing the beauty of modern day Tibet. See them, I feel like they're, my colleagues as well. I see all my colleagues, my supporting team right in front of me. They are photographers as well, and they are showcasing the beauty of this museum, just like the, let's say, first batch of photographers are showing the beautiful new Tibet right in 1956. And right here, we see the first female tractor, 女拖拉机手. If you still recall, actually women, regardless of their family, were considered, or let's say regardless of their background, were mostly, except for the situation where you're born in a noble family, you perhaps are considered a princess or something, but most women are directly considered as the lower class ranking people in old Tibet. But yes, here we are seeing this lovely lady being able to work and be a tractor, happily, let's say, in the future, happily become a principal of a school. That is the picture of her. And we've got our first bank, first electric power station, as well as first factory. According to the information I have, actually, in the old days, it took between 6 months and a year to make a round trip between Lhasa and Xining in Qinghai, or Yang'an in Sichuan. Since 1951, Tibet has gradually built a comprehensive transport network composed of highways, railways, air routes, and pipelines. Highways with a total length of 118,000 kilometers have been built and providing access to all administrative villages in the region. And right in front of me, I see this transportation system. I see the transportation system built in the modern day Tibet. Isn't this magnificent? This one was built in 2004. And also we've got some built in 2009. And we were actually let's say, get into Tibet through all these different railways and airlines and, of course, expressways. So, yes, you are watching a special episode of Railway Trippin' Tibetan Style. This is Niu Niu. We are providing you with all this information, all these fun shows on multiple platforms, including all the CGTN platforms, China Plus Culture platforms, as well as CRI Learn Chinese platforms. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment in the comment area. And if you want to say anything, you can, of course, let me know in the comment area, and I will try my very best to reply to you as soon as possible. In this entire memorial hall, we covered the old Tibet, when 95% of the people then do not really have any dignity, any right to let's say, have their own lives. They were considered property of the landlords, of the higher rank monks, of perhaps a specific Buddha or a living Buddha, and they were not even considered human beings. But after a while, since 1951, since the peaceful liberation of Tibet, the situation has been changed. Of course, we've seen some setbacks, we've seen some problems. In 1959, some higher rank monasteries, as well as people, sometimes we call them noblemen or aristocratic men, were in a rebel against the central government because they do not want to lose their luxurious lifestyles. They do not want to lose all their slaves, all the properties. But in 1965, after successfully dealt with all that rebellious, China has announced the establishment of the Tibet Autonomous Region. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Tibet, you can at least start from remembering these 3 different time marks. That is 1951, that's the free or peaceful liberation of Tibet. And we also have 1959, where there has been a little bit of research for rebellious, and 1965, that is the establishment of Tibet Autonomous Region. And right here we are reaching the end of the exhibition. If you want to come here to Lhasa, the provincial capital of Tibet, I strongly suggest you to come here. And allow me to provide you with a little more information that I have. The average per capita disposable income of rural residents was actually 14,000, around 600 yuan, and that's 12% over the previous year, and representing double-digit growth for the 18th consecutive year. And because of the aiding Tibet, aiding Xinjiang kind of projects, people from all around the country would come here and to provide Tibetan people with the kind of help they want. One anecdote I'd like to share here is that I only learned it from yesterday when I talked to a tea expert. Actually, we talked to a tea expert here in Tibet, and there was this tea culture in Tibet because when the Princess Wencheng was married into Tubo, to Songzan Ganbu, she introduced the tea to Tibet. Being a high plateau area, they didn't used to have this specific kind of plant, and it is still a little bit dry up here. The weather was not very conducive for human inhabitation, and tea, starting from Princess Wencheng, has become a vital necessity in their daily lives. However, did you know that people in Tibet were not allowed to grow any tea on their own lands? Because tea were just too precious and too important, just a little bit like salt, or well, yes, salt is very important to people's lives. So in previous days, in previous, let's say, dynasties, salt is also in charge. The merchandising, the, let's say, selling and buying and harvesting and, let's say, digging of salt were in tight control in the hands of the central government of previous dynasties. And here in Tibet, the growing of tea was held tightly in hands of the central government. And Tibetan people were not allowed to grow any tea, even though they need tea desperately in their daily lives. And it was after 1951, when the People's Liberation Army get into Tibet, they started to grow tea in Tibet, and they started to tell people, it's okay, you can do that. So as something mundane and simple as tea, it was because of the liberation that Tibetan people started to have the right to have tea, to drink tea as much as they wish. And I think that is just one little anecdote I'd like to share. Cannot wait to see what you think. So let me know in the comment area, what do you think? Let's continue to walk. And right here we have the last sets, 2 sets of sculptures showcasing the spirit, the strength of Tibetan people. Right here, these are what we call 老西藏精神, the old Tibet spirit. The word spirit in Chinese is actually more of a, let's say, word not talking about spiritual kind of sense, but more like talking about the strength and the mental power you have. And these people working on the infrastructure construction, working on building Tibet into a better place, also kind of hold the Tibet spirit. And here we are, reaching the end of today's show. Hopefully you have learned something new you didn't know. I know that for a lot of people, especially in Western world, under the influence of a lot of Western media, you might have this very idealized impression about Tibet in your heart. You might think that previously people were living in a rather peaceful life. They are not attached to any material. They're not burdened to the materialized society. They were living in a totally peaceful and happy, idealized world. But through today's exhibition, I think it's safe to say it does not exist that way. And the only way to have people living in a perfect world is have them being able to have a grip on their own destiny. Let me know if you agree with me, and thank you so much for being with me this entire show. Make sure you find us and follow us on CRI Learn Chinese Facebook page, YouTube channel, and 英语环球广播微博, as well as all the CGTN platforms and China Plus culture platforms. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in another show of Real Way Trippin' Tibetan Style. Bye bye, guys.